In 2018, I was laid off work, which hit me hard because I'd been with the company for 15 years, and it was the only job I'd ever had. I wasn't offered a severance package, just a bonus that was barely 4 figures. The financial stress I was under was exacerbated by my rocky marriage and the desire to continue my 6-year-old son's private school education. Even though I was only bringing in a couple $100s a week in unemployment, I immediately set aside God's tithe. I didn't care what bill was due. I returned my tithe first. I committed to being faithful, believing that God would take care of us. Through God's provision, we managed to pay our bills, including my son's tuition. It didn't make sense financially, but God stretched the 90% we had to cover our expenses. Leading up to my final unemployment check, God told me to fast and pray for 7 days and nights. I sensed that He was preparing me for what was to come, so I obeyed Him and prayed daily throughout my fasting. I didn't eat or drink anything until the fast was over. I still had not found full-time employment, and I wasn't sure how we would make ends meet once I received my final check. One day, while in my prayer closet, I felt a calmness wash over me, and I sensed God saying, "You and your son will be fine." Little did I know that a few days later, I would receive some shocking news. While my husband was visiting his family out of town, he texted me and said he wasn't coming home. I tried calling, but he refused to pick up the phone. That day, he left our family and never returned. I felt as if I should be falling apart, but I knew I had to keep going for my son's sake. The mental struggle along with the financial struggle was enough to drive a sane person crazy. But I was at peace. I knew this was a gift from God as I thought back to a few days before when I had sensed Him saying that things would be fine. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I could trust my Heavenly Father because He had been preparing me. I continued searching for work, and shortly after my husband left, I got a job as an insurance salesperson. It wasn't a high-paying job, but it seemed as if whenever I was lacking funds, checks would show up in the mail from companies who I'd overpaid or from people paying me back for money I'd loaned them. I returned tithe on every penny I received, and I found that I always had just enough to pay what was due. A few months later, I received a call from a company I had applied to months ago. The position was exactly what I had prayed for, and my new salary was almost double what I was making before being laid off. Not to mention the salary increase, my previous employer contacted me and said that they had made a mistake. Because of my years of service, I qualified for a severance package in the tens of thousands of dollars. I was speechless as to God's providence. 5 years ago, I asked God for faith to weather what felt like one of the biggest storms of my life. Without a shadow of a doubt, I can say that He faithfully dropped breadcrumbs along the way, little reminders here and there that He was with me and that He would provide. It is my joy to return God's tithes and to continue to witness His goodness on a daily basis.
Taste and see